Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really fascinating idea that connects geography, deep history, and even the way you and I think. We're going to explore a thesis that asks a wild question. Can mountains actually shape our beliefs? So where do we start? Well, not in some dusty history book. We're going to jump to something very recent. Late 2021 to be exact. Right in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. At the time, data analysts were looking at vaccination maps, and something just jumped out at them. A really strange pattern. The German-speaking parts of the Alps, so areas in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, they had some of the lowest vaccination rates in all of Western Europe. Now, in a global health crisis, an outlier that clear? Well, you gotta ask, what is going on here? And look, this wasn't just some simple case of vaccine hesitancy. The debate got intense. People were throwing all kinds of theories around, from, rural attitudes to a fascination with esoteric beliefs. But none of it really answered the big question. Why here, in this one specific place? And as you're about to see, this kind of skepticism has roots that go way, way deeper than just one pandemic. Because this is where it gets really interesting. When you start digging into the history of this region, you realize, oh, this isn't new. Not at all. It's more like a powerful echo from the past. The source material shows this long and, often pretty dark history of resisting authority and mainstream science. You see it way back in the 14th century, with Jewish communities being blamed for the plague. Then it pops up again in the 15th century when the Alps became a real center for witch hunts. Fast forward to the 19th century and you've got violent riots against the first vaccine campaigns. And even in the 20th century, the area was a breeding ground for fascism, and more recently for anti-government movements like Querdenken. The pattern is just undeniable. The philosopher Theodor Adorno had this really sharp insight into this kind of thinking. He once defined anti-Semitism as simply the rumor about the Jews. Now, think about that for a second. It's a belief that doesn't need facts or evidence. It spreads through what people say, through what you hear. Adorno argued that this kind of environment creates what he called authority-bound personalities, who are just naturally suspicious of any information that comes from the outside. Okay, so we've got the geography, we've got this long, stubborn history of skepticism. How do we possibly tie it all together? Well, a German political scientist, Dr. Michael Blume, has put forward a theory that connects all the dots. The mountains, the history, and, this is the key, our media. All right, let's break this down, because this is the core of it all, the Alpine Media Thesis. Blume's big idea is this. The mountains themselves forced people into small, isolated communities. And how did they govern themselves? Through speech, through talking to each other face to face. So over centuries, they developed a culture that deeply trusts the spoken word, but gets really suspicious of written rules, or prescriptions, as he calls them, sent from some far-off capital. And he says this impulse can go in two very different directions. And this isn't just about globalization, where one idea takes over everywhere. The thesis uses this really useful word, globalization. It's kind of like, you know how a huge fast food company will change its menu to fit local tastes in different countries? That's globalization. The same thing happens with ideas. A big global concept, say a scientific mandate, comes along, but when it hits a strong local culture, it gets resisted, it gets translated, it gets completely reshaped. So this sets up a huge historical battle. On one side, you have the oral culture of the mountains, local, personal, and all about self-rule. On the other side, you have the written culture of big states and empires, centralized, impersonal, and all about top-down authority. The whole history of the Alpine region is pretty much the story of these two cultures clashing, over and over again. So, is this powerful urge for freedom and local control a good thing or a bad thing? Well, according to the thesis, the answer is yes. It's both. It's deeply ambivalent with two totally different faces. It really is like two sides of the same coin. On one hand, that fierce independence gives you incredible constructive things. We're talking about Swiss federalism, the Red Cross, even amazing scientific hubs like CERN. But you flip that coin over, and that exact same impulse for local control can fuel some really destructive traditions.
conspiracy theories, a deep resistance to science, even the kind of nationalism that led to fascism.
And you can literally see this preference for small-scale thinking in the political data today. The average region in the Alps has a population of just under 1.7 million people. Now compare that to its neighbors. An average German state has 5 million people. A French region, 3.5 million. It shows you just how unique and decentralized the political DNA of this area really is.
Okay, so how does a cultural tension like this last for hundreds of years? How does it keep getting reignited? According to this thesis, the answer isn't just in the culture. It's in the technology we use to communicate.
You've probably heard that famous line from the media guru Marshall McLuhan, "The medium is the message." What he meant is that the tools we use to share information, whether it's talking or books or the internet, they aren't just neutral pipes. They actually change the way we think and the way we organize our world.
The thesis argues that every single media revolution is like throwing gasoline on that old fire in the Alps. First came writing and the printing press, a huge win for centralized, text-based power. Then came electronic media like radio and film, which allowed leaders to broadcast an emotional, speech-like message to millions, overwhelming the slower world of text-based democracy. And today, the digital revolution is just doing it all over again, but on a massive scale.
Our modern digital world has basically put that old oral culture on steroids. I mean, just think about it. Populist rallies are all about the energy of the live speech, not the boring details in a policy paper. Conspiracy theories don't spread in academic journals, they spread through viral videos and voice notes, which are basically just high-tech rumors. And social media is a constant 24/7 challenge to the authority of old-school, text-based institutions like universities and public health agencies.
So in the end, the Alpine Media Thesis, it isn't just about a mountain range. It's really a mirror that reflects a tension that's happening everywhere. It's that fundamental conflict between local, speech-driven beliefs and centralized, evidence-based knowledge. And every new technology just turns up the heat on that conflict. And that leaves all of us with a pretty massive question for the age we live in. If our media truly is shaping our reality, what traditions are we choosing to build with it right now? The constructive ones or the destructive ones?